Thank you, Amy. Robin Andersen has a book called A Century of Media, A Century of War, and it's available up one escalator. And she is Associate Professor of Communications and Media Studies program at Fordham University. She's the author of, go Fordham, she's the author of Consumer Culture and TV Programming and co-editor of Critical Studies in Media Commercialism. Robin Andersen.
The last panel, Mark was telling us to do get his incredible footage about Fallujah, that he had been in Iraq for 8 days, and for me to understand the Iraq War, I had to go back a century and do a century. I think it started out when Bush called Osama bin Laden the evil one, and if you look back at Harold Laswell's roundup of what the birth of modern war propaganda, it comes right out of Harold Laswell, the evil one, in which we first learned how to demonize the enemy, make simple dichotomies between us and them, and eliminate all discussion of economic or failed politics in international states. Of course, World War I now, historians look back and say it was the greatest mistake of the 20th century, and millions and millions of people died. So all of these things I learned come with us, and after the course of a century, propaganda is now turned into, and it is called information management. It's also sometimes called stagecraft. We can't say escalation. We have to come up with surge, because we remember that negativity from the Vietnam War, where the war kept escalating, and that's a word that we can no longer use, as we can no longer use quagmire. And to think of these rhetorical flourishes and how they move through time tells us a little bit about how hard it is actually for a government to sell war to the people of the American, and that we do not want to see horrifying images like that we saw, like the ones we saw after Tet, in which we saw wounded American soldiers, we saw civilians being killed, we saw soldiers being executed in the streets, and we saw images of little children running from napalm. And information management since the Vietnam War has been about making sure that those images do not reach the American public. Today, what we have really with World War II, starting with David Sarnoff, people from NBC, CBS, moving into the media after they had worked for intelligence and propaganda within World War II, we have that escalated through the century, and through the 1990s, when you have the same digital computer-based technology that runs the weapons of war are the same exact ones that motivate and run video games. The imaging in video games is from pilots, and the training of pilots is the same imagery that is used in the entertainment of our children in video games, so that these images about war that recruit and train children in the weapons of war now come into the American entertainment center, in the console, in the homes, in the private space. And that really moves us very much closer to what can be called permanent war, pure war, endless war, because we have incorporated the celebration of the technology and the weaponry within our culture. And our audiovisual culture not only appears through the targeting and looking through satellite imagery on the news, but it's in movies, and it becomes a landscape that we're used to, and we become very familiar with war, but a certain type of sanitized war that is a simulation of real war, because nobody really dies on the other side of the video screen. So we become numb in the face of slaughter. Actually, what we talked about in the last panel on war is that we really don't engage ground troops in battle anymore. We drop bombs from the air, and not engaging in battle, we do that in movies as well. Black Hawk Down being a great one, where we've transformed Mogadishu into kind of a celebration of war, because it allowed American soldiers to really get on the ground and fight it out with an enemy, in a representation that we really don't have acted out so much because of our high-tech weaponry. Of course, Rumsfeld's been biggest supporter of that. But at this point, the merger of the visual and the technology is very much part of the economic research and development that is carried on within the same corporations of the military-industrial complex, as well as Disney and Pixar. And some of the people that are developing the Pixar and the video games are also now developing the same types of digital and video technology, again, that is in the weapons of war. So I really believe that after the century, and looking at how media has merged with the demands and the planning and the rationality of the kind of movement for war has permeated our culture. And one of the things that we might think about is a movement or a call to divest the media from the weapons of war. It's not really working. Yes, I think we should clap for that. I don't think that... I think that when we ask, wow, how can the media, how could they have led us into this and done such bad journalism? How could they have been so cowed? But my question is, how could they have done anything else with their very economic profit structure? Now, video games is the most profitable aspect of the media industry, and they're making games about explicit battles in Iraq, and some of the soldiers come back and they're consultants on the video games, and they become simulated players. So we're not just watching kind of movies anymore. These video games actually, our children participate in them. And if you remember on Michael Moore's 9/11 film, one of the soldiers who clearly had trained and been recruited through video games said, wow, these weapons are, when it kills somebody here in Iraq, it's really not like a video game. So we numb ourselves in the face of death, and they've taken the bloody pictures off through information management and embedding, and they have turned war into entertainment for us. And I think it has taken and robbed our humanity and our expression in America. And I think we really need to get someplace to get the reality of war, back into the realm of the real.